Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM, channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, we are focusing on the painful journey of crime victims. What happens after the headlines fade and justice still has not been served? We'll hear from a grieving family still seeking answers an entire year after their son was murdered. We'll also get some guidance from a local advocacy group helping victims and their families navigate a very complex and often frustrating judicial system. My guests are Travis and Yvonne Clark. They are the parents of Shaheed Omar Jr. Now, he was shot to death on July 12th of last year while attending a vigil at Wise High School for three of his friends killed in a car accident. And you may remember those friends include Minnesota Vikings rookie Kyrie Jackson, Isaiah Hazel, and Anthony Litton. Also joining the conversation, Arlene Joel. She is the Chief Executive Officer for Community Advocates for Family and Youth, also known as CAFE. Thank you all so much for joining this conversation. I appreciate it. And I would also I'd like to extend my condolences to both you and you, Travis and Yvonne, for the loss of your son.
Thank you.
Sure. I have a couple of fast facts before we get into this conversation. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 3 out of 4 people will become victims of a completed or attempted assault in their lifetime, and 2 in 5 will be victims of that particular crime at least twice. And Black Americans are twice as likely to be robbed when compared to their white counterparts. And victims of violence are nearly 4 times likely to experience PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of their experience. I want to start with Travis and Yvonne, if you don't mind. And I know this is a very sensitive issue, but can you kind of take us back to the moment when you learned about your son's death and what happened?
Well, it's almost really easy because you replay those moments so many times, throughout your mind of, what we could have done differently to have prevented that day, but we definitely it started off as a regular Friday morning, and we were waiting to take my, waiting for him to get here because we were at time babysitting our granddaughter, and so we were waiting for him. And you know how it is as parents, you kind of fuss at your kids like, Omar, where are you? We got to get to work. And so just as a normal day. And so when he finally got here, we transitioned and went to work, and my wife went to work. And so, of course, he was getting ready because, him and his friends were preparing throughout that week. You know how kids celebrate each other. They get the T-shirts made and things of that nature. So they were all planning and getting ready for that afternoon to get ready to go to the visual. So my house is kind of like headquarters. So whatever's being done is always done here that Monday. After those 3 gentlemen lost their lives, they had a cookout here that Monday. So they had been coming all week long, just planning and how they were going to celebrate that visual or their lives at that visual. And so one of the things, like I said, they were getting made with T-shirts, and they had a certain time that they were going to meet here and leave. And so I had gotten off work that afternoon and went to the Amish market, and he was waiting for me to get here. And I never forget, I said, well, your mother wants to do something with Elani, which is my granddaughter. And so I'm going to have to get her ready. And being the father, 24-year-old father that he was, great father that he was, he sent me a picture showing that he had already gotten a dress. He had already did her hair. Imagine a 24-year-old young man doing his daughter's hair. But that's the type of father he was, and he had already got her hair done. He just sent me the picture saying she's ready to go. And so when I finally arrived home, I told him, hey, I'm here. And he came outside and he walked down the driveway, and he came and shook my hand and gave me a hug. All right, Pops. And he said, Pops, I'll see you later. And he got in the car and he drove off. And so my wife had gotten home, and we were here with our granddaughter, and we're just sitting here watching TV.
Actually, it fell off to
Yeah,
sleep.
it kind of fell off to sleep. It was, it was kind of quiet and things fell off to sleep. And I knew when I looked at my phone, I had like 10 or 12 missed phone calls. But she jumped up. My wife jumped up and started screaming, "Oh my God, shot." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?"
I originally sent a text back because I thought it was a typo. You know how people send messages through text. And so I originally sent a text back saying, what were you trying to say? Because that's so outlandish to hear that your child had been shot. He's at a vigil. So has to be incorrect information. So
who was that text from, if I may ask?
It was from it was my cousin, and then the boyfriend of my cousin, but it was several people trying to call, but she was the only one that actually just sent a text through, because it was like 9:30. And so you're laying down, and at that time I just don't answer my phone. And so unless it's my kids, I see my kids, then that's the only time that I'm answering that late, because you're preparing for the evening. And then I have my granddaughter, and she's sleeping. And so, I originally just thought it was a typo, and this can't be right. And so then she called and said the same thing. And you immediately go into shock, because I couldn't formulate the words to share with my husband what, this news that I had just received. And we both were in a state of shock. You don't know what to do next. You can't think, let me put on my shoes, let me get out of the house, let me go and drive to where he is. Your mind is just lost. And Wise High School is approximately an 8-minute drive from our home. I don't know how long it took me to get there, because I could not picture in my mind how to find a school. And then at the same time as I'm trying to drive there, my phone is constantly ringing and constantly ringing, and I cannot remember how to get to this high school. And mind you, I've drove to this high school several times. This is where my son graduated from. This is where my daughter graduated from. So it's a feeling, it's a message, it's a call that no parent ever wants to receive. And in this community, you feel like you're isolated from those type of events. We were the parents on the other side of this at one point in time, where you're seeing things like this on the news, you're hearing things like this on the radio, and you're praying for other parents. But now to find yourself on this side is completely unbelievable, because my son is not associated with anything that would make you think that this would be his end, the end of his story. Being murdered, being shot would be the end of his story. Never in your wildest dreams would you think of such a thing. Kids, you think of car accidents and things like that because they're all driving, and the kids in this community, majority of them have had cars since high school. So you think of things like that, but shot, like, it's a hard thing to digest. We're still in an acceptance mode, having the rally. It's all a reality check. It being 1 year later, it's all a reality check, and you're still trying to face reality, that this is our reality.
Because Arlene, you have been active in the community for a really long time. And I would imagine what you're hearing from Travis and Yvonne is not unfamiliar.
Well, I guess first, let me say I'm so sorry for your loss. No one deserves to lose their child like that, or even to go through that experience. And just to say that being here, sharing your story, really helps other people that have to face that same type of tragedy. And I hear what Harold's saying. Too often, we hear of this experience that's happening to our children. And it is unimaginable. But every time that a family or parents are able to share their experience, talk about how they got through it, unfortunately, it does help other people heal. Because people feel like, they did it, I can do it. They weren't expecting it, neither was I, but here they are, willing to share their story and to help others. So just thank you for that, and certainly commend you for the strength, because being able to go back and relive and talk about it's a normal day, and that's how we expected it to end, but it didn't, is so important. And it's even important for providers, because it kind of keeps us, saying that, right, we need to be informed and empathetic and fighting for everything that families need to help get them through such a tragedy.
One of the things that Travis and Yvonne need is closure. Certainly one of the things, the many questions that are unanswered. Travis, when you think about, first of all, the fact that there has been no arrest as of yet, this happened, a year and 5 days ago. What questions are constantly going through your mind?
Well, it's like we started off. You struggle with the reality of the position that you're in, and often you go through so much grief and turmoil and things throughout the day to really sometimes wake up like, is this really my life? Like, how did your life go from just being a normal family, doing normal family things, to one of the greatest black clouds that you can ever have hanging over you? And so you struggle with the fact of first really realistically saying that this is our life, especially when we have grandkids, our two our grandson and our granddaughter. And so that's one of the hardest part, because at the same token, as much as they help and bring, some joy in the situation, to look at their eyes. I mean, just last night, I was strolling. I'm an Alpha Phi fraternity, and I was looking at our Father's Day pictures, and there were so many pictures of these kids holding on to their father, on their father's neck, just doing things of, a father playing with his son. And these are the things that hurt you to your heart, to know that this was stolen from them. And as much as I try to be there as their grandfather to fill that gap, I'm still not their father.
Yeah. And one of the things you said in the very beginning of this conversation was thinking about what you could have done. That there is nothing that you could have done that could have prevented this.
Yeah.
This is not your fault.
Correct. And it's not, and you realize it, because it's not like you're saying, I should have told him he couldn't go to that party. I should have told him. We're talking about a candlelight visual for 3 young men that lost their lives, that had politicians, that had delegates, and most of all, police officers there.
Yeah.
How in the world do you think to yourself, something like this in our wildest dreams could have happened on a night like that for that type of event? And you're like, it's no way this should have happened.
And the way my son had been grieving all week, and that was the toughest part for me, is knowing how sad he was all week, and to think that his life was taken and he was still in that sad place from mourning his friends. In the Upper Marlboro community, the kids follow each other. So these kids, elementary school, middle school, high school, they know each other. Everyone that was at that vigil, it was like a reunion for them, because they all graduated from WISE at some point in time, and they all came back for this vigil. Inside the vigil was over 3,000 children in there, outside in the parking lot. When it was over, it was like almost 200 children still standing in the parking lot when everyone.
Yvonne, hold on for 1 second. I hate to interrupt you,
Yes.
but I do need to take a break. Arlene, very quickly, what is the website for CAFI before I take this break? Real quick, please.
It's CAFI.org, CAF as in Frank, Y.org.
CAFI.org. I will be posting that information on our website on WHUR.com tonight after 7 o'clock. We have much more to talk about as it relates to this particular very important topic. So stay with us. The Original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about victims of crime. My guests are Travis and Yvonne Clark. They are the parents of Shahid Omar Jr. He was shot to death on July 12th of last year while attending a vigil at Wise High School. Also, Arlene Joel, Chief Executive Officer for Community Advocates for Family and Youth, also known as CAFI. Before the break, Yvonne, you were talking about the memorial vigil prior to your son's death. Please finish your point.
Yes. So there were, roughly 3,000 kids that were, and I say kids, but these are 20 somethings. But
the kids to us, because they are as old as our children.
I still think that was, my son. He was 24, but he's still a child to me. And for it to be that many people inside, and after the vigil, 100 to 200 people standing outside, police and politicians had just left, and for this to be something that occurred, and like I said, him already being in a sad, depressed state because of losing his close friends in this car accident, what continues to race through my mind is, how was he feeling? What was he thinking in that moment? And you try not to think about all of the negative aspects, but you can't help it as a mom, as parents. You never want your child to hurt. And so you try to find something. And I know that several people that were there explained to us that he was walking around and he was inviting people to his baby shower, which was taking place the next day, the baby shower for his son. He was also planning to propose to his fiance at that event, at the baby shower. So those types of things led me to try to turn the negative into positive and feel like, okay, he did find some kind of joy in that space. And that's what I try to, consume my mind with. We're all in therapy. We're hoping that we can get his 3-year-old daughter in therapy. But as of now, we keep hearing that she's too young, but she's very smart for her age, and she notices his presence is gone, and she asked us, can we call him? Because he had her every other week for the entire week.
She says my dad had been kidnapped. Those are exact words. My daddy's been kidnapped.
Because she hasn't seen him, and the babies, they get these words, they learn them. You don't know how they learn them, but this is what she walks around saying. And then when she gets really upset and really frazzled, that's the first thing that she says: I miss my daddy. And we're all in pain. So it's like the blind leading the blind, basically. We coddle her and we hug and we talk about him. And she always says that he's in space, he's the stars, and she'll point to the sky when she sees anything in the sky and say that that's daddy. And then in the next moment, she'll be asking, can she call him? So we know that she doesn't have a clear understanding of what's going on, but we never want her to think that she's been abandoned by him. That's what therapy comes in at. So hopefully we can get her into therapy soon. And again, her age is the issue, but going backwards and going back to that night, just hearing that news and even being at the hospital, it's just so much pain. Like, it's certain places that you can't drive, trying to go near Wise High School, trying to go to the hospital where he passed. It's just like some places you just stay away from. For me specifically, everything is a trigger for me. Everything is a trigger. And for people on the outside looking in, yes, it's been 1 year. For me, it's still day one for me. It's still day one. And having to simultaneously fight for justice, grieve my son, make sure his children are okay, make sure I have a daughter that's in the doctorate program, and making sure that she has what she needs mentally to stay in the program, and she's going to stay in it and do it for a brother. And it's just so many connections of pain and just not knowing what to do with it. And, again, we've been in therapy for a year now, and it feels like there is no progression, even although I know that there is. But in your heart, when your child is missing, there's nothing that can ever make life better. You have to learn who you are.
Let me ask Arlene specifically about that, because I think, Yvonne, you're making some really important points. So, God forbid that anything like this would happen to a family. And I mean, there are so many things that families can plan for. They can plan, they can have a will for an elderly person. They can plan for a generational wealth. They can plan for education, but no one plans, Arlene, to, in the event that their child is murdered or a loved one is murdered. So with that in mind, what are the first steps that someone should take in a situation like this?
But I'm glad to hear that you are in therapy, because although that no one can ever take that pain away, right? And the therapy will give you the ability to manage it. And even you being in therapy, you're getting the skills to help your granddaughter. When she does mention her dad, you have that, that information or that ability to be able to communicate, to her in a positive way. And that's what people actually walk out of therapy with, just the tools to manage the triggers and the feelings that they have inside. And so it's important that you're doing that, because it wasn't, I hear you say, like, your community is so close knit. And so you guys were impacted significantly, and so was everybody else around you. And so you think about, oftentimes they don't know what to say to the families either. But your ability to address it through mental health support makes you stronger. You never get over it, but you learn how to manage. So maybe 5 years from now, you will go past wise, and you'll, grieve privately for your son always, but you'll be able to drive down that road. And it might take 5-10 years, because I don't want to even, stir up the memory. But I'm glad that that's the path you take, because so often people don't believe that mental health can help and support. And that is really the best support that you could possibly get. And I hear you say about the 3-year-old, but, as soon as she turns, 4 or 5, there are things that, play therapy, art therapy. We just had, we're involved in like a 4-week session of art therapy for children who have experienced, violence, loss, that kind of thing. And, all those, it's just a way for them to get it out, so even at a young age, her coloring, her drawing, still helps her to process and for you to see the feelings that she has inside.
Travis, Yvonne said something that struck me about the vigil. Mm-hmm. That there were some nearly 3,000 people inside, but in the moments before this happened, there had to be at least 100 people outside. Mm-hmm. when these shots rang out. Can you talk to me, Travis, about any frustrations you feel where there were so many people there and yet no one seemed to have seen anything?
And that's very frustrating, because, until this happened,
Mm-hmm.
we were just like anybody else. You know, you sit there and you watch the news. Never in 100 years did you think it would twist and be the other way around. I'm not watching the news. I'm now currently on the news. And because of the situation and what my son's case was linked to or caused from, it was very high profile. It's very high profile case.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, there's not really too many people in Prince George's County that doesn't know this story or heard this story. And I mean, it's to the point where just last, I think, Friday, we switched from Verizon to Xfinity. The Xfinity technician comes in the house, he looks and sees the picture. He goes, "Oh, my son went to school with your son." So,
Wow.
I mean, we can be anywhere, everywhere. Everybody that knows the story, from coworkers of their daughter went to school with my son, or somebody they knew my son. So it's so high profile that everybody knows the situation. And so for all those children, and like my wife said, you know, kids, but young adults that were out there and witnessed not what happened. They saw what happened. You know, it's point blank. It is what it is. They saw what happened and they saw who did it. But the situation where you deal with these kids, they have this, I don't know, I don't want to get involved mindset, or even sometimes not just the kids, the parents of the kids. We've experienced, there's many kids that we have experienced of the parents basically saying, "No, I don't want my child to get involved." And these are Prince George's County residents. And yet, you know, we live in this community, in this county, and we see something that happens and we allow it to go on and to not be dealt with to the point where that it's me today, but it could be you tomorrow. And so to allow someone like this just to continue walking the street after you blatantly have seen what happened, I don't know how anybody can kind of just live with themselves. Like, you know, just to witness something like this, and it's no fault of anybody's, of what you saw. You were there, you happened to see what happened. But when now you have the power in your hands to do something about it, and you choose to do nothing about it, I almost put you in the same category as the person that pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
Because it can happen again, because you were allowing it to do when you had the ability to do something about it.
And that's interesting. If I could just jump in.
Go ahead, Arlene.
Because, you know, we do a lot of work in the schools too. And that's heartbreaking, because we need to be able to encourage people to hold people that do bad things accountable. But we often hear students talking about their fear of retaliation. Correct. You know, not only against them, but their families. And so when you think, like, if we're living in that kind of world, you know, what can our expectation be to hold people accountable if, you know, everyone's fearful? But you're right. You want people to tell, because that's the only way we can get things under control.
And it sends a strong message when you use it sends a strong message that in this community, not just like Marlboro, not just the surrounding area, but Prince George's County as a whole, it sends a message that if you come here and you commit a crime, that people will speak up.
That's right.
That's what strengthens us to do what we're doing, speaking out. It's not just justice for our son, because unfortunately Omar is no longer here, and there's nothing that we can do about that.
Right.
But holding the individual accountable, it not only brings us a small piece of closure. We'll never really have full closure, but it brings us a small piece of closure because of the accountability. And then also it's going to save the next child.
Exactly.
The next child from losing their lives, the next parents from sitting in our same shoes, begging for people to come forward. We're a strong community in Upper Marlboro, and let's showcase that now. Right. Like, let's use our voices together. Let's show our kids, like, it's their future. This is the future world that they have to live in. And if it's full of criminals, what kind of community is that?
Yvonne, let me ask you, do you and Travis feel that you have been supported by the Prince George's County Police Department, that you've been getting the information that you've wanted regarding updates. We spoke to them, I did earlier this week. They would only say that this remains an open investigation. But during the course of this year, do you feel supported?
By the police department?
Yes.
Absolutely.
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 No, that's good.
Absolutely. They have, even the rally that we just had, it wasn't
Right.
a call that we had to make to them. The chief of police contacted us and said that they wanted to be there and they wanted to speak. Every council person contacted us. We want to be there. We want to speak. My son has received proclamations, and people aren't just writing these things. They're standing on their word, and they're still showing up for us. A year later, some of those folks that were at the rally were also at Wise High School when his life was taken. So they're not just, spewing out words. They're actually putting action in place and asking us, like, let's come to the table, let's meet and see what we can do to get witnesses to come forward. What's the reason for why they're not coming forward, and what can we do about that? And our hope and desire is that there can be a change when it comes to things like this, and that change can be in our son's name. His legacy. In the 24 years that he was here, we feel like he already made a strong dent in this world. In his career, he was a counselor for underprivileged and underserved youth. And the way that he poured his heart out into a lot of the youth that didn't have access to the things that he had access to growing up. And sometimes, when you grow up in a certain family, you lose sight that there are other people that were struggling. And my son wanted to help those that were struggling. So for him to lose his life in this manner, it's beyond sad. It's beyond sad. And a lot of majority of those kids that were at the school, that were in the parking lot, these aren't strangers.
Right.
Every one of these kids knew my son. So it's like minding your business. How does that even come into play in a situation like that? And then if there's fear, what can we do about that? And so we do have a meeting on the books to talk about these things with the chief of police, with council members. So definitely we have their support. I've been to events for Angel Moms where you try to go out and meet people and just talk, and you're trying to find some kind of way, something to help you get on the other side. And so you figure out where your strength lies. What we realize where our strength lies is fighting, especially for me. When I lay down and I'm under the covers, that's when I go deeper and deeper into depression. But as long as I'm standing and I'm fighting, it makes me feel like my son is looking down and he's like, go, mom. Like my kids know that, and most moms, you're mama bear and you're going to protect your cub. And so all of this is us in protection mode. We're protecting our son. We're going to continue to fight for him and show whoever it is that comes behind us. Here's the playbook. Don't sit down. Don't be quiet. As much as hard it is to continue to do these things and continue to use your voice and continue to replay the story and talk about the story, continue to do it, because God put this in our lap for a reason.
Let me ask you this, Arlene, for families who have had similar experiences, what services do you offer to help them navigate the justice system, to deal with law enforcement, with prosecutors and the like?
Well, I think for us, we're trying to connect with the families pretty quickly, because we know that it's a whole new language, and we want to make sure that families and individuals, have a voice. But just like you're fighting and you're getting people engaged, everyone doesn't have that same, strength to be able to do that. But when they see people doing it, it gets them engaged. And so we do try to communicate with people to make sure that they understand that they need to have a voice. If there's financial assistance that they need, we talk about mental health. We talk about, legal services, all the different state programs that are available to families.
Can you give me an example?
Well, the state has criminal injuries compensation, and which will help with expenses, funeral expenses, as well as any kind of lost wages. They also help families, with mental health services. Every family and survivor speaks a different language in terms of what their personal needs are and what they need to get through. And so being able to develop that individual gap with them is really important for us. We do a court education program at the courthouse every month so that people really get a sense of, how's it going to be when I'm in the courtroom, whether I have to testify or whether I just have to sit there and hear what really happened. All of those are re-traumatizing events. And so the more that we can, share that experience, with families, with individuals, the stronger that they become in terms of making sure that they're there to hold someone accountable. When someone, does go to trial, during sentencing, we're working with families to make sure that they have a victim impact statement, because that matters. Their history matters, but your voice matters in terms of how you want offenders held accountable. Everyone doesn't go to jail for life. And so making sure that we're connecting families with, VINE, victim information notification, so that if that person does come up for parole, you're there to have voice again, because, you can share with them, like, my pain hasn't gone away. And so that helps in terms of continuing to hold offenders accountable and not just, release for good behavior while they're there. And so it's all those kind of things that, that we try to bring to the table, because it's, like I said, it is a new language, working with law enforcement and working with the prosecutor. But families do get through it, but we want them to be, participating in the process.
Travis, let me ask you, beyond what most people would think would be the obvious, and I'm talking about grieving the loss of your son, but kind of big picture, how has this horrific incident changed your view of community?
It's definitely shed light on the community, because you understand that Prince George's County is predominantly a Afro-American community. I don't know what percentage is, but we probably do 90%, somewhere around there. I mean, it's high. And so you take situations like this and you say, if I take the same scenario and I put that down in Tyson's Corner, what information would the police have had 24 hours later? If I take the same information, same scenario, and I put it in Fairfax County, 24 hours later, not necessarily 365 days later, there's still not an arrest. There's this. If it doesn't have to happen to me, I don't have to get involved. I don't have to say anything, and that's just such a stigma that we have, and it's sad, and it's now passed on to our children. And I don't understand it. And I do get it, because had this not happened to us, we would never really understand all the things that go on behind the scene when it comes to us. We don't know all that goes in behind the scenes when you have to deal with the justice side of it, the justice system, and why this and why that, and why not this, how come this hadn't happened, and you're given reasons of why, but yet you still have to trust the system that eventually it will take its place. But so you view the community differently, because it makes no sense that, we haven't come together to understand that I'm not going to get involved until it happens to me.
Right.
And that's the narrative we have to change. And that's one of the things we're trying to really portray and shine light on is, look, this is what's going on. Don't come entering my club and becoming a member of this club. And now you realize what's going on. When we're trying to help shed light on the situation, let's deal with it before you become a member.
Exactly.
Because the very fact that somebody's still walking these streets that have done this, and there's many situations that a lot of these offenders are repeat offenders.
And not just walking the streets still in this community.
Correct. In this community.
And that's the message we want to send home, even with us having the rally this past weekend and inviting 2 other families to join in with us at the rally. These aren't families that are far removed. These are families who had sons that were murdered in the same community. So we wanted to shine a light that this isn't just a isolated incident. This is something that is an ongoing problem in Prince George's County, and not just Prince George's County, in Upper Marlboro. The other 2 children that we shared the rally with were Upper Marlboro and Bowie. So and if you have been in this area, it's all like one big circle, one big cluster. Right. And so we want people to understand that this is an ongoing problem. And so not only is the person that murdered Omar still walking the streets, the person that murdered Darnell is still walking the streets. The person that murdered Miles is still walking the streets. And these are the 2, the young men that were also highlighted at the rally on Saturday. And so we want to put it in people's faces, so to speak, like to give a reality check that this is a huge problem. These aren't kids out. My son didn't go to DC or Virginia. This happened at a location in Upper Marlboro from a person that was in Upper Marlboro. So we really want people to understand that. And even though the rally was centered around stop the gun violence, I'm a strong believer in that a gun cannot kill without someone pulling the trigger. So it's not stop the gun violence, it's stop the criminals in their tracks. Stop them from doing what they're doing because they're scared to come here and do it, because they're thinking about what's going to happen in the aftermath. If I get caught doing a crime in Maryland, I have the potential to go to jail for life. And not to bring up another state, but in Virginia, when I was younger in high school, you would hear people say, "Oh, don't go to Virginia. If you get caught doing something there, then
it's over."
It's over, right?
That same mentality in Prince George's County.
And to answer your question, Harold,
real quick, because I'm running out of time, but go ahead, real quick, please.
Just to bring center on the situation, the 2 other individuals that we featured, the Miles, 3 years ago, I was online pledging for Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. I was online with his father 3 years ago, and him and I began to share stories, and him and I had the biggest connection from brotherhood. And so when his son was murdered, he had to drop line, and I supported him and, whatever. And lo and behold, come 3 years later, my son is murdered. And the other individual is my coworker. So it just goes to show you how small of a world in this community within Prince George's County that this can happen.
Well, certainly we hope that the legacy of your son is that it will be the beginning of a cycle that hopefully can be broken. I am out of time, but Travis and Yvonne Clark and Arlene Joel, thank you all so much for sharing with us. We will certainly be in touch and continue to watch this case.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is the Daily Drum for this Thursday, July 17th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.